The winningest driver in Formula One history is Frenchman Alain Prost. In 11 seasons, Prost has earned 47 victories and the nickname, the Professor. Rivaling Prost's accomplishment is Brazilian Ayrton Senna, who dominated the lesser classes and whose 9 seasons at the top have produced 39 victories. Each man is also a 3-time world champion. For Prost, the mid-1980s were filled with Grand Prix glory. In '85, he scored 5 wins and claimed his first world championship by the huge margin of 20 points. A year later, Prost repeated his titleist in a 4-way battle with the Williams Hondas of Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet and Senna's Lotus Renault. In 1988, Prost and Senna were joined in a McLaren Honda Super Team and proceeded to win 15 of 16 races. But along the way, there was acrimony between the teammates that spilled out onto the racetrack. At season's end, Senna claimed his first championship, but McLaren was a team divided, and the worst was yet to come. At the Japanese Grand Prix in 1989, Prost and Senna crashed together. Senna was disqualified. Prost took his 3rd world championship and left for Ferrari. Incredibly, a year later in Japan, the two crashed again. This time, the incident clinched Senna's 2nd crown, and though the dust would settle, the bitterness continued. In '91, Senna took his 3rd world title. Prost criticized his Ferrari team and was fired, and the Prost-Senna rivalry cooled. Now, 2 years later, it has blossomed anew. Prost in a Williams, Senna in a McLaren. Each has tasted victory 3 times. Each has also suffered the indignity of failure in one of the most competitive seasons ever. From the podium, each man can look out on history. The World Championship will be decided between them. One man will have his 4th title. The battle continues today in Montreal. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Fair Montreal, where aspects of French and English combine to make one of the world's most beautiful and multifaceted metropolises, is the site of round 7 of the Formula One World Driving Championship, the Grand Prix of Canada. It's been a big week here in Montreal. On Wednesday night, Les Canadiens won their 24th Stanley Cup, and now on Sunday, the teams of the World Driving Championship have arrived for the 25th anniversary of the Grand Prix of Canada. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Bienvenue out in Montreal, where it has been a big week indeed. When we last left our heroes in Barcelona, Spain, Alain Prost had the edge over Ayrton Senna for the World Championship, but no longer. Following Senna's record-breaking 6th victory in the Grand Prix of Monaco a few weeks ago, he now leads Prost by 5 points for a possible 4th World Championship. And only Juan Manuel Fangio of Argentina has more than that. Now, the spirit of this racetrack deals with that of the late Gilles Villeneuve, Canada's racing hero, and there's a special poignancy this weekend. In yesterday's supporting Toyota Atlantic race here at Montreal, Villeneuve's son, Jacques Villeneuve, won in his very first appearance on the track named for his late father. And we hope to tell you more about the Villeneuve spirit here in Montreal as the day goes on. But now let's talk a little bit about the racetrack. And with me to do that, ESPN Formula One analyst Derek Daly. Derek, we have a long history of upsets here in Montreal.
Well, that's right. For the last 15 years, the Formula One World Championship has been racing here on Ile Notre Dame. And, of course, of all the tracks, this one seems to throw up the unusual. Think back to 2 years ago. Nigel Mansell thought he had won the Canadian Grand Prix. While waving to the crowd with 1 lap to go, the engine stalled at the hairpin, and he handed a race win to Nelson Piquet. Think of Thierry Boutsen. He's now struggling to find his form with the Jordan team, but he won here in 1989 for the Williams team. Think of Michele Alboreto. He's a past winner. He didn't even qualify here this weekend. And Alain Prost, in 12 attempts, the most successful driver in the history of Grand Prix racing, has never managed to win this great race here. It's also thrown up first-time winners. Of course, the late Gilles Villeneuve was one of those. Well, if it throws up a first-time winner this afternoon, or even a first-time podium finisher, could that be Michael Andretti? Well, earlier this week, we spoke to Michael about the man who took over his seat in IndyCar racing, of course, the Formula One World Champion, Nigel Mansell.
Well, I think Nigel's doing exactly what I thought he would do. You know, I figured he was going to be very quick, and you know, he's doing a great job. It's a little different situation for him coming here and for me going there. I think the ovals are something for him to get used to, but other than that, it's a little bit easier transition because you know, you're getting used to a race car that you have to back off earlier and do things earlier and everything's slower, whereas I'm going from from that to a car that you have to take a lot deeper into a corner, and you have to carry a lot more speed in the corners and have more confidence, and one that's a bit on knife's edge, where the Indy car is a little bit more forgiving and actually more fun to drive than a Formula 1 car.
Michael's transition has been difficult, but the message to as many fans is simple.
Well, I think just to hang in there. You know, things aren't as bad as it looks. I think, you know, the races, which is the part that you only see on TV, hasn't been going well for me, but the other parts of the weekend have been going pretty well, and I think sooner or later it's all going to come together for us.
Michael's teacher is the world's fastest Grand Prix driver, Ayrton Senna. He uses him as his yardstick in his ongoing quest for success in Formula 1.
All right, thank you, Derek. Michael could hardly find a more difficult standard to try to measure up to. There Michael sits in his car. Now let's get down to pit reporter James Allen to tell you about a special addition to our coverage today. James?
Thank you, Bob. Well, you know, we like to break new ground here on ESPN, and here in Montreal, for the first time, we've got real-time telemetry on your screens. Michael Schumacher and Riccardo Patrese will take you around the Ile de Notre Dame circuit, and you can ride with them, see the graphs on your screen. That's the performance, the driving skills. Michael Schumacher's been running real well this weekend. He's in 3rd place on the grid. I just grabbed a word with him, and he's confident he's going to be running after the Williamses. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you, James. The cars are on the grid, and we're just a few minutes away from the green light in round 7 of the World Championship. Stay with us for more from Montreal. This ESPN Speed World presentation is brought to you by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. By Budweiser, the king of beers, who reminds you friends know when to say when. And by Toyo Tires. No matter what you drive, we've got you covered from H to Z. Welcome back on a sunny and steamy afternoon at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Now let's check the lineup for the Canadian Grand Prix with the help of our Yamaha starting grid. All Williams on the front row. Alain Prost, his 7th straight pole, never won here in Montreal. His lap averaged 125 miles per hour. Next to him, his teammate from England, Damon Hill, in the 2nd Williams Renault, 3rd in the morning warm-up. On row 2, all Benetton, Michael Schumacher carrying an onboard camera and our ESPN Ford electronics telemetry system, 2nd quickest in the morning warm-up. Next to him, Riccardo Patrese of Italy, his best qualifying performance of the year thus far. He drove in the first Grand Prix held here back in 1978. On row 3, all Ferrari, Gerhard Berger, his best qualifying performance of the year. Next to him, Jean Alesi, 29 years old on Friday. Ferrari's looking good. Row 4 will be Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the Ligier. Next to him, Ayrton Senna in the McLaren, his worst qualifying performance in 6 years with the McLaren team. Row 5 will be Karl Wendlinger of Austria in the Sauber, next to Mark Blundell of Great Britain in the 2nd Ligier. Row number 6 will be J.J. Leto in the Sauber, next to the McLaren Ford of America's Michael Andretti. Row 7 will be Eric Comas of France in the Larousse, next to Ruben Barrichello in the Jordan Hart. Row 8, Philippe Ayot in the Larousse Lamborghini, next to the Footwork Mugen Honda of Aguri Suzuki of Japan. Row 9, Christian Fittipaldi in the Minardi, next to the Footwork of Englishman Derek Warwick. Row 10, Andrea de Cesaris in the Tyrrell Yamaha, next to the Lotus Ford of Johnny Herbert. Row 11, Alessandro Zanardi in the Lotus, next to him the Tyrrell of Ukyo Katayama of Japan, who has spun countless times. Row 12, Fabrizio Barbazza in the 2nd Minardi, next to the Jordan of Belgian Terry Boutsen, a former winner of this race. All alone on row 13, Luca Badua of Italy in the Lola Ferrari, the only man who did not qualify for this race, as Derek mentioned earlier, Michele Alboreto of Italy. A very sad moment for a very nice guy. Here's a look at our pre-race conditions. I mentioned it was hot. 87 degrees, and that track temperature is much higher. As you see Michael Andretti in his car, we do have a light breeze, very little chance of rain. Now, we mentioned also that Canada is a dramatic race, providing lots of surprises. Take a look at the list of drivers who scored their very first World Championship points here. Among the many famous names you will notice, our own Derek Daly, right there in 1978, the year that Gilles Villeneuve won this race. Now, Derek, let's take a closer look at the track. I noticed that Michael Andretti is not moving on the grid.
Michael had hydraulic problems this morning. It looks almost electrical now. They're going to take the engine cover off that car. That's what they look like they're going to take off. But Michael Andretti fails to start here. Every other car has left the grid and are on their way around the final warm-up lap.
Now, they won't be allowed to leave that car there. If they can't get it rolling shortly, they're going to tell them they have to push the car off. Michael will have to start from the pit lane. You see the computer to the left side of the car.
Never did a lap this morning in the warm-up session. Never got to do a hot lap. One slow lap while he had a hydraulic problem. But now, this is not a good sign that they're not able to get this car running by now.
On the lower left, team manager Ron Dennis is saying push it off. You see they have an auxiliary battery out there as well. That would lead one to believe that once again it's alternator problems. They can't keep a charge in the car.
Bitter disappointment from Michael. Really had a very good day yesterday in practice and qualifying. Got within 4/10 of Ayrton Senna yesterday. This car is better than normal. Michael likes it. He said it's just a little bit slow. But what a terrible situation right here.
He will start from the pit lane. While we have a moment, let's take a look at the track. Derek?
Well, the circuit Gilles Villeneuve is one of the toughest racetracks now used on the Formula One circuit. As the cars negotiate turns 1 and 2 and head off towards one of the many chicanes, you'll begin to notice that most of the bumps here are actually on the straights, and the mostly second and third gear corners are actually fairly smooth. The heaviest braking is for the slowest corner on the course. Right here, turn 10 is the hairpin, and then you blast through the gears, accelerating up to 190 miles an hour through some spectacular S's. For this track, you need very good brakes and lots of fuel.
Now there is Michael Andretti being pushed backwards in the pit exit. When they get it started, he will have to start from the pit lane. There are some of the cars making their way down to the final chicane before turning onto the pit straightaway, where they will line up in their positions for the standing start. Derek, you know how dicey a moment this can be.
Well, the start can be a scary situation here. In 1982, Didier Pironi was on the pole. I was several rows back. When he stalled, you were unsighted. And when I got to him, it was a scary moment because I knew I couldn't run into the back of him. I turned sharp left. Mansell was right beside me, saw what I was going to do, turned left with me. We both negotiated the chicane, and we didn't laugh about it afterwards, but it was a heart-stopping moment, which often happens during these incredibly difficult Formula One starts.
In the left line of cars, you can see the hole left in Michael Andretti's position. We'll get the red light. We'll be under starters' orders, then the green. We have not had a standing start this weekend without a crash. Stand by for round 7 of the World Championship. Very slow off the marks. Both Benetton cars, particularly Michael Schumacher and others, take advantage. A Williams 1-2 at the first corner, and the 2 Ferraris. And Senna coming up underneath one of the Ferraris. Senna said he was going to lay back and let the race come to him. Not a chance. He's up to 5th place right now from 8th.
Senna never lays back. He's past the 2 Benettons. He was over the curb. He was on the grass. But Michael Schumacher had a terrible start. But look at Damon Hill.
Damon Hill rockets ahead of his pole-sitting teammate to take the lead. Senna is in 4th behind one of the Ferraris.
But crazy blowing blocks the bench, blocks the leash. That's Martin Brundle. But look at Schumacher, already up behind Patrese, his teammate almost.
Down the back stretch along the rapids on the St. Lawrence River. You are on board now with Michael Schumacher. Hard braking for one of the chicanes. 6 of the 15 turns on this course are second gear corners. Very hard on brakes, very hard on fuel consumption. Now the Ferraris attempt to get back around Senna. That's Jean Alesi taking Senna to the outside in the hairpin.
Senna goes round the long way wheel. Oh, they rub each other. They actually hit each other through that little kink.
Coming up to a blind brown now side by side at 175 miles an hour. Senna on the inside.
Senna pulls it off. The Ferrari had to back off and let him go because he knew Senna was not going to back off. But Senna, spectacular here. Now look at Berger on the grass trying to keep Senna at bay.
What a first lap. Now you're on board with Schumacher again. Notice the vibrations. This track is very bumpy and very slick. Schumacher closing up behind his teammate.
Went by Martin Brundle, terrible start, but now he's on his way. He was spectacular all through practice and qualifying. And right here, Schumacher gets into oversteers so often, and on cold tires, he usually is the man that goes into attack mode.
Here's our first look at our Ford Electronics real-time onboard telemetry. This is as you see it, which is not always the case in televised sports. Notice RPM on the left, miles an hour in the middle, throttle position on the right. Take it from me, just like that. It's going to be 100% or 0, the way these guys throw these cars around. Now, let's get more on Michael Andretti's story. Here's James Allen.
Okay, I'm down in the pit lane, and the engine cover is just going back on. They've managed to start the engine. They were fiddling around with the black blocks. The ECU looks like an electronic problem. Made the engine refuse to start, but Michael Andretti will be out of this pit lane within a minute. They've just lost a bolt into the top of the engine. I hope that doesn't affect the performance later on, and you may have seen that on your picture. Anyway, Michael Andretti, as you can see, will be out of here in about 20 seconds, Bob, but he's a long way down.
It will go down to that one-piece under tray on the bottom of the car and rattle around for the rest of the day. Now, Senna is around the Ferraris. There is Patrese leading his teammate Schumacher. So, after one lap, as they come around to complete lap 2, let's update. Hill, Prost, Senna, Berger, Alesi, Schumacher, Patrese, Brundle, Wendlinger, and Blundell, your top 10. Here's another look as Senna makes his pass.
Under heavy braking, this is the hairpin, the slowest corner on the racetrack, and Senna slides down the inside. Now, the Ferrari should have more power exiting, but through the S's, Senna uses all the road, and now the two cars ahead of him are the two Williams cars.
The Williams-Renaults begin to draw away. Look at the advantage they have already. Michael Andretti, we can tell you, is now back on the racetrack after a furious opening series of laps here in Montreal. Damon Hill leads as they flash down into the stadium section where the hairpin is. On board right there with Michael Schumacher. We'll be back for more action from the Grand Prix of Canada. This should be a doozy. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Damon Hill leads the Grand Prix of Canada. You're on board with Michael Schumacher running in 5th place in the race right now. We've had a furious spate of passing, flashing right now down towards the stadium section, and the hairpin turn about 180 miles an hour, then hard on the brakes and down to second gear. Now let's go back as you see Hill and Prost running away from the field. Ayrton Senna in 3rd place. Here's another look at the start from Senna's onboard camera.
This man is spectacular. Now, look at the Benetton. Almost a crash there with Senna, and I believe that was Alesi. Look, Senna goes down the outside. Now watch what happens here as he turns in on the curb, on the grass. Incredible that he didn't hit Jean Alesi in the number 27 Ferrari.
You see him struggling with the wheel under hard acceleration.
You can see Schumacher is making a good run here. He did get by Patrese on the last lap. Now he's by the first of the Ferraris, Alesi, and now challenging Berger.
On board with Michael Schumacher, the Ferrari just ahead, fishtailing wildly as they accelerate up to 145 miles an hour. Let's take another look at the telemetry. RPM's on the left. This is a Ford V8. The max RPM should be just over 12,000.
We've had great pictures from the inside of this car all through the weekend. Schumacher fights this car. The steering wheel backwards and forwards makes corrections. You can see he's 100% on the throttle here. Watch the speed go up. Look at this. 178, 90, and then jumps on the brakes. Look how quickly he loses speed when he gets under brakes.
Gear shift position in the lower left. Watch how quickly they change with these semi-automatic gearboxes from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, second gear corner. He's got a car ahead of him.
Watch what happens here. Look how low he is. 34 miles an hour. Now you'll count about 6 seconds. Watch that speed go up. Within 6 seconds, he's at right there, almost 180 miles an hour, such is the speed. Oh, look at the run he has on Berger.
Here's where Nigel Mansell made a huge mistake a year ago, trying to get underneath Ayrton Senna for the lead in this race. He bounded across that gravel trap, spun on the front straight, and went out of the race. Our thanks to the engineers at Ford Electronics for helping us arrange this telemetry system. We hope to see more of it as the year goes on. Up front, it is a Williams-Renault 1-2. There are no team orders, we are told. Although keep in mind, Alain Prost is 2nd in the World Championship coming into this race. Teammate Damon Hill is 3rd, but right now Hill leads the race.
They have been 1-2 in every session that has been run this weekend, except the morning warm-up. Damon Hill was only third and Michael Schumacher was second. But Alain Prost has regularly said this car on full tanks is so much better than anything else he has ever driven. In fact, this car does not change when it goes onto full tanks as much as every other car. You can just see Senna still in the background, but he's a long way to go to try and catch those Williams cars. Oh, a pass for the lead.
Prost takes the lead from his teammate, Alain Prost, going for the lead in the World Championship as well. Senna in third place behind him. Realistically, that may be all Senna can hope for on this racetrack against these cars. Over the blind brow, fastest part of the racetrack right here, over 190 miles an hour, and then hard on the brakes for this second gear chicane.
The Williams team has won 4 times here, but Alain Prost is trying number 12 because he's never won here.
This is another look at the pass. Alain Prost, very clean. No great challenge from Hill, but he tucks up neatly behind. The work of teammates in the best cars in Formula One. 6 laps complete. The order is now Prost, Hill, Senna. Schumacher has gotten around Gerhard Berger. We'll try to show you that in a moment. Jean Alesi runs 6th right now, followed by Patrese, Brundle, Vedlinger, and Blundell. Here's another look now as Michael Schumacher makes his move down into the chicane toward the start-finish line underneath the Ferrari.
We saw this run earlier on, but he wasn't close enough. Now look, he's actually alongside the Ferrari. The Ferrari can do nothing. Schumacher has the apex. He fights the car from curb to curb, but manages to get the pass, makes an adjustment on his steering wheel to his active suspension, and this is from the outside now. Another replay of Schumacher down the inside. The Ferrari has no recourse, so within a couple of laps he actually passes both V12 Ferraris.
And now the number 2 Williams Renault of Alain Prost begins to pull away from his teammate. Damon Hill may fall into the hands of Ayrton Senna, so we may have a battle yet. A Tyrrell is the last car on the track right now. He'll be the first man that Alain Prost will lap. Hill leads Senna by about 2 seconds. Then it's about 7.5 seconds back to Michael Schumacher. Nobody more than a second apart until you get back to Carl Wendlinger in 9th, who trails Martin Brundle by 1.4. Then almost 2 seconds back to Blundell, and another half second back to J.J. Leto in 11th in the Sauber.
First car to be lapped will be Katayama. We've seen him many times this weekend. Unfortunately, he's been backwards most of the time we've seen him. Just about every session, he flies off the road or into the sand trap. And this morning in the warm-up again, he flew off the road. But he moves to the right and lets Alain Prost slice down the inside.
In fact, the Tyrrell team told us that Katayama was in danger of running out of tires. You only get 7 sets. He flat-spotted most of them with all of his spins. Now, while the action calms down a little bit, let's get a story from James Allen in the pit lane.
Well, thank you, Bob. When we were down the end of the pit lane with Michael Andretti, it was all sound and fury, as you could see. A lot of activity on the car. What they did, in fact, was to change the ECU. The reporting, I've just been speaking to the team. They would say that there's absolutely no problems on Michael's car, but of course he's got an awful long way to go. But at least he's got a healthy car to run with.
There is Ayrton Senna, Michael's teammate, closing in on Damon Hill. Now, this surprises me. Senna said he was going to lay back. As you mentioned, Derek, he's not the kind of guy to lay back, but Hill should have all the race car he needs to move away.
Well, maybe this is what Senna terms as laying back. Interviewed this weekend, he said the only problem is they do not have enough horsepower, purely down to the engine power, or the lack of engine power. And the feeling was, Bob, and you know this from the scuttlebutt around the pit lane, that actually Senna could lose interest very quickly if they didn't have a competitive package for him to race in.
I need to make an apology to Ukio Katayama. He's not last on the racetrack. Michael Andretti, of course, being 2 laps down, is last, but Katayama was the first one to be lapped. There you see the field streaming through the 1 and 2 corners on this racetrack. 2 particular, very difficult. We'll be back with more of the Grand Prix of Canada when we return to Montreal in just a moment. Welcome back to the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. A capacity crowd on hand despite ticket prices up to $200 through the hairpin and launching up to the 6-speed gearbox. Jean Alesi, who has been magic in the Ferrari for the last 3 races, 3rd at the Grand Prix of Monaco. Ferrari is on the move. There's Ayrton Senna running in 3rd place right now, but closing up on Damon Hill right there.
But the Williams car is in control. This car gets updated almost every single time it comes to the racetrack. For this race here, they have new front wing tabs, which are the extensions to those front wings, and new wing end plates. And Adrian Newey, their aerodynamicist and chief designer, said this may be the configuration this car will stay with for most of the rest of the year, because they have found it to be better in the wind tunnel. And Williams have a research and development program so good. Oh, it looks fit. Is that Philippe Alliot? It is Alliot. But I was saying, Williams have a research and development department so good that whenever it proves better in the wind tunnel, it always proves better on the racetrack. And that was one of the developments to make this Williams car, if you can believe it, even faster than it was in previous races. But look at Senna, Bob.
Right up on Damon Hill. And Alain Prost in the race lead is not that far away. You want to talk about how hard the Williams team works? Alain Prost says they test regularly 3 times a week between races. He and Damon Hill are in these cars trying out new tricks. That is a very expensive process, and of course cost is a major item of discussion throughout motorsports. Now there is Luca Badoer, the reigning Formula 3000 champion, who came in with his Lola to change tires, and he leaves a lot of them in the pit lane on his way out.
And you can't tell me that it's not a pressure cooker situation for Damon Hill when he sees Ayrton Senna in the Marlboro McLaren beginning to bear down on him. Lap after lap, Senna inches ever closer. That would be a scary thing for most drivers to feel as he looks in his mirror and sees that McLaren get ever closer every lap.
Alain Prost now closes in on Derek Warwick in the footwork. Warwick running in 21st place to the right of your screen there. And about to go a lap down as we work number 11 of 69.
We see the domination of this Williams team every time we turn on the television, but it's still staggering to think that Prost now has 7 pole positions in a row. But the Williams team, as Philippe Alliot tries to vacate his car for the day, the Williams team have had 16 pole positions in a row. I mean, that is total dominance of qualifying in Formula One.
Who would have thought that a qualifier extraordinary such as Ayrton Senna would go a year without a pole? His last pole, and the last one for the McLaren team here in Canada 1 year ago. Ruben Barrichello now having problems with the Jordan. He was running 12th, but it appears he has lost the fire as well. Senna closing in on Hill.
And Senna is relentless in his pursuit of anybody ahead of him. Not known to make mistakes. He'll do it inch by inch if necessary. And you can clearly see here, that's turns 1 and 2, that Senna is closing in on Damon Hill. Warwick moves aside. Now he needs to move aside for Senna.
Tough to do at this part of the racetrack. Here's a view from our Canadian broadcasters looking about both rear tires of Damon Hill's car.
You got a quick glimpse there of how this active ride works on the Williams. The suspension going up and down, almost in a soft fluid motion. But we're back inside now with Ayrton Senna.
Closing up inexorably. If the race were to end right now with Senna 3rd and Prost 1st, it would be a 1-point world championship in favor of Alain Prost. But I have a feeling there's no way this race is going to end like this.
Senna was the first man to cause controversy here this weekend. On Friday morning in the first session, drove out and had an electrical failure in the car. They red flagged the session to go get him, bring him back so that could effect repairs, and all the other team managers went berserk as to why they would stop the session just to bring Senna's car back. And the ruling for the next day was that they would not, in fact, do that again.
In fact, the ruling for the rest of the session was that they wouldn't do it. So who, of course, was the next guy to stop? Luckless Gerhard Berger, who had gearbox problems and sat at the side of the track for the rest of the session.
It almost became hilarious. The team managers walked down to the steward's office. It was 2 flights of stairs upwards. Frank Williams was with him. Frank was in his wheelchair. And Flavio Briatore from Benetton literally picked up Frank Williams and carried him up the stairs so as he could voice his protest.
That steward's office has been a very busy place this weekend. We'll tell you more about that a little later in the show. There is the running order. 17 minutes, 10 seconds into the race. Alain Prost is out front. Damon Hill 2 seconds down. Senna 2 more back. Stay with us for more. Montreal, where of course the biggest sports news of the last week was the 24th Stanley Cup, the 100th cup ever awarded, a record 24th time to the Montreal Canadiens. We offer our congratulations to the team. This town went absolutely crazy. Some folks in town, you may have heard, crazier than others, and many Montrealers have been severely embarrassed by what they call their avenue of broken glass. Congratulations to Patrick Roy, MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and welcome back to the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve, Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, James Allen. Glad to have you with us for round 7 of the World Championship. Grandstands overflowing, hillsides overflowing with people. You're on board with Riccardo Patrese as he tries to run down 6th place Gerhard Berger.
This is one of the many chicanes here, and then we're down to a left-hander that you take in 2nd gear. You heard Prost say earlier on, it's hard on the brakes and hard on fuel. The reason it's so hard on fuel is these long acceleration straights up from 2nd gear. Look at the Ferrari, stays in the middle of the road and then moves back. Here's a good look at the telemetry on Patrese. Now look at the throttle. He doesn't come off because of the automatic gearbox. Look at his revs up to 13,000 in race conditions. But for my mind, this is the best blast here. Watch how slow he goes into 37s. And it's the incredible acceleration as he goes up through the gears here. We counted during practice and qualifying. In 6 seconds, they go from 38 miles an hour to above 170.
What a race driver's corner. Just over that brow, you've got to be lined up for an apex you cannot see as you approach. I drove this course in a rental car back on Thursday. You can't see that corner. You just have to line up on a speck on the horizon and hope you're in the right place. Otherwise, you might blow the next corner and the straightaway, assuming, of course, I don't hit the wall. Hard over the bumps.
Lots of criticism of Patrese. They say he should retire. He was slow. He couldn't match Schumacher. Well, at Monaco he did, and he did here. He only qualified 1/10 of a second slower. See, the Ferrari's much quicker through that right-left chicane there. Look, he pulls out about 3 car lengths. But Patrese says he's getting much more comfortable now with this car, and it shows in his lap times in relationship to Schumacher.
Out front, Alain Prost gaining about a half-second a lap on the field. He is absolutely storming away from this field. His fast lap now 1:23.563. Damon Hill in 2nd place, 8.3 seconds behind. Senna still on Hill's tail. Then a 6-second gap to Michael Schumacher in 4th, and then 18 seconds back to Jean Alesi in 5th, and another 3 seconds to Gerhard Berger in 6th. And of course, he is occupied by Riccardo Patrese.
Where did he get all that oil on that rear wing? I mean, the only car that he followed closely was his teammate Damon Hill for those early laps. Yet Prost is covered in oil. We remember that happening in Barcelona when he followed his teammate, and in fact his teammate went out of the race earlier for a mechanical problem that we thought was actually caused, or we could see early in the race because of his loss of oil. That may cause the problem. I hope we don't have the same situation again, but Prost has not been behind many cars, and yet that car and the rear wing in particular is covered in oil.
Must have been one of the cars he had to get around. Michael Andretti, by the way, runs in 22nd place right now. Last car running on the racetrack, but he's closing in on Ukyo Katayama to begin passing cars and moving up. Now, lots of cars are carrying onboard cameras in our race today. Well, this battle continues to heat up. Let's get on board with Carl Wendlinger now in that V10 Sauber. Just ahead is Martin Brundle. They are 8th and 9th on the track, and just ahead of Brundle is Patrese in 7th spot.
Look at the steering wheel on Wendlinger's car. It's not a full wheel. Notice that the top half of the wheel is not there. He prefers it that way. He can see the dashboard. He can move his arms around enough, and he feels he has enough control even if he wants to grab a handful. But this is a good 4-car battle here inside the Sauber. Oh, look at the close-up under braking. This is turn 10, the hairpin. And here's the blast of acceleration here. It is absolutely spectacular to watch these Formula 1 cars go through this section right here. Over the hill, 175 miles an hour, flat out all the way. Just spectacular.
While we watch this battle, let's get down to James Allen in the pits.
Well, Bob, the tyre covers are off down at Ferrari. The folks at Goodyear sometimes say that the first person to change is always likely to be Gerhard Berger. I see the tyres that are out are number 27 for Jean Alesi, but the guys, although they look a bit relaxed, they are ready to make a tyre stop any time.
Well, right now, that self-same Gerhard Berger is leading this train of cars. Berger is 6th, Patrese 7th, Brundle in 8th, Wendlinger in 9th. Martin Brundle is really coming to grips with this racetrack. Remember, he was second in this race for a time last year with Benetton before the car broke. A huge disappointment for Martin. Ligier has that Renault V10 engine with almost 800 horsepower as Wendlinger fights the steering wheel. They have the power. They've got a new under tray. Aerodynamics are working on the car, and Brundle appears to be on form. Now Patrese got to watch out. Here comes Brundle.
Martin Brundle did mention after the warm-up this morning, he has a point and squirt car. What that means is you point it, you squirt that Renault horsepower, and off you go down the road. So he said this is a good car for the Ligier. Look at this, he has a little poke down the inside of Patrese. Patrese is under major league attack here.
And now looming in the back, another black Sauber car. That's J.J. Leto running in 10th. He's going to join this train in just a moment. Launching over the hill, down onto the straightaway, leading to the pit entrance, 190 miles an hour, hard on the brakes. Ricciardo, but oh, the Ferrari, Gerhard Berger getting loose there. And now Brundle closes up on the Ferrari, on the Patrese's Benetton a little bit.
Great stuff here. Ferrari V12 engine. It's a development unit. They have variable trumpets on this engine. What that means is the trumpets will vary in size between high-speed use of the engine and low speed. They're long when you're running fast, and they're low to the engine or short when you're running slowly. But this is the battle on the racetrack right now. Look at Wendlinger. A tremendous grandstand view of all the action ahead of him. Patrese uses the curbs. Can't see the curve, but we see a white flag. There's a white flag, so there's somebody running slowly on the racetrack. Oh, it's a Ferrari.
Jean Alesi's Ferrari is slowing, and they are past him.
Well,
Alesi was 5th, so the battle is now for 5th place. Berger will now be 5th, Patrese 6th, Brundle 7th, and Wendlinger 8th. Behind them, J.J. Leto is 9th, and moving into 10th, Eric Comas in the LaRousse Lamborghini. Jean Alesi will be pushed off.
Well, James Allen had just mentioned that the Ferrari pit had number 27's tires laid out. Maybe he got on the radio and said he was having trouble, he was having a problem, and suddenly something small becomes terminal.
On board with Jean Alesi as he unhooks the steering wheel, a very unhappy birthday gift for the man who turned 29 years of age back on Friday. A lot of questions about Jean Alesi's future. He has agreed to a new contract with Ferrari, but he has not signed it. And a lot of people are whispering that that is because Ferrari is talking to Ayrton Senna. Minardi ahead, like Fabrizio Barbaza. Michael Andretti is by Ukio Katayama. That means Michael is now up into 21st place and moving on. Tough break when the engine wouldn't start to get this race underway. Michael is on the march, back aboard with Carl Wendlinger. We'll take a quick time out and return to the Grand Prix of Canada. You do too. One of the most beautiful and one of the oldest cities in North America, Montreal began celebrating its 350th anniversary a year ago. They do love a birthday party around here. The first European to set foot here, Jacques Cartier, in 1535, when the rapids on the St. Lawrence River prevented him from continuing any further in his exploration. It is multilingual, and it has a lot of European flair, as well as proximity to the United States. On the Ile Notre Dame, in the middle of the St. Lawrence River, there is Damon Hill running second in the Grand Prix of Canada. Michael Andretti is about to come under fire, but let's get a pit report first from James Allen.
Well, Bob, if ever there was a driver that the crowd here wanted to see win, it would have to be Jean Alesi, Ferrari number 27. The spirit, of course, of Gilles Villeneuve in that car. The reason why he went out is because his engine's let go, so Alesi will take no further part in this race. However, we are now down in the Ferrari pit. I mentioned a second ago that Berger is going to change his tyres soon, and all the Ferrari guys are on red alert. We've just been pushed out of the way, so I think Gerhard Berger may well come in soon. We've already seen Aguri Suzuki and Andrea De Cesaris come in just to change their tyres. So we're in the tyre changing zone.
All right, thank you, James. There goes Ayrton Senna. Michael Andretti has been passed by all of the top 3 cars of Prost, Hill, and Senna. Alessandro Zanardi in the Lotus being lapped now. Zanardi running in the 14th spot. So the 13 cars leading the race are on the lead lap. Getting a little bit balked there behind Fabrizio Barbaza is Ayrton Senna. Barbaza was quite the hero in the pit lane on Thursday. He took out a rod and reel through his line into the rowing canal built for the Olympics back in 1976. Caught a carp that was about 18 inches long and weighed more than my leg. Frightening fish. He got a big round of applause.
And he had a swarm of photographers around him who thought it was a great catch, so no doubt that will make all the Italian newspapers and magazines over the next week or so.
You got to look at Damon Hill there. Consider his situation, driving what is recognized as the best car in Formula One. Granted, he does not have many Grands Prix to his credit. At this point, he has driven barely a dozen Grands Prix. What happens? If you win, you're supposed to, because you're in the best car out there. If you don't win, why not? Pretty much a lose-lose situation, it seems to me, for Damon.
It is, and people talk about a make-or-break season for Damon. Maybe it is. I mean, he said he doesn't feel any unusual pressure, but he does try hard. In fact, he spun off the road during qualifying.
Johnny Herbert brings the Lotus into the pits. They're using the jacks fore and aft instead of their spectacular surfboard technique in which they pull the car. Oh, and he had rear wheel spin, and it stalled. You saw the wheel spinning as the rear jack was still in the air. He got it started again, and Johnny Herbert is on his way. That was close.
Well, he's lucky he didn't stall that and sit there for a lot longer than he did, because you could clearly see those wheels spin before he took it off the jack. So it was in gear with the clutch disengaged. He was lucky he got away with that.
The surfboard technique I was talking about, they actually bring the car into the pits, sit the chassis of the car onto this board in the pit lane, and use the active suspension to raise the wheels off the ground to change tires. They didn't do it there, and I'm not sure why. A lot of oil on the front of Ayrton Senna's yellow helmet.
But nowhere near as much as we see on Alain Prost's car. We saw it earlier on. We might get some good close-ups of it later on. But inside now with Ayrton Senna, this is the hard braking for turn 8. It's a second gear. You flick the third gear right in the middle, and then you blast on down, never taking your foot off the throttle.
Got a brief look at a graphic there showing you how much better a year Ayrton Senna is having right now. But as Derek mentioned, a lot of folks are wondering what Ayrton Senna is going to do the rest of the year if the McLaren team can't get the engine power they say they need to compete head-to-head with the Williams cars. Right now, Ayrton Senna looks like all the competition Damon Hill wants right now.
Blasting through the S's here. These cars, Michael Andretti said, are knife-edge cars. And he has difficulty getting used to them. He said they're on a knife edge all the time, always nervous, always trying to get away from you. Senna is much more used to driving a car like that. Therefore, he settles down on a Grand Prix weekend much quicker. But Michael Schumacher is the first forward in the pit lane.
Let's get down to James Allen.
There's an awful lot of brake dust coming off this car. We talked earlier about the brakes being a major factor. He's really been using his brakes for sure. A very fast stop for the Benetton team. Michael Schumacher, the first of the leaders to come into the pits.
Interesting exit technique, too. You heard him gunning the engine. Run, trying to make sure he didn't let the revs go down and stall it.
And of course, it wasn't the first forward. The Lotus had just been in there. But in less than 30 laps, we have some of the leading cars stopping for tires.
Now, Michael Schumacher was about 14 seconds behind third place Ayrton Senna when he came in. Here's Aguri Suzuki in the footwork car, waving his hands.
He drove right by. He drove right by. He obviously missed his pit, or they didn't realize he was coming in, or they weren't ready for him. He drove right by, but if he's in trouble, he'll go straight back in again. One of the reasons why they change tires, you ask, well, why don't they go on a tire that they can last the whole race on? They're racing on C tires. The next harder compound is B. A C tire is 3/4 of a second faster every lap. Multiply 3/4 of a second by 30 laps. And when you do the arithmetic, you can very easily see why it's better to make a pit stop, because you can get in and get out in less than 15 seconds. But Damon Hill is now in.
Jacks go under fore and aft. The car is raised up rather leisurely. They weren't ready for him. They didn't have those electric tire blankets off.
They didn't even have the rear tire out. They've run around all the mechanics with rear tires. You're absolutely right, Bob. They were not ready. But look at the McLaren boys on the right-hand side there. They are ready for their man if he chooses to come in.
A look at the new right rear Goodyear on the car of Damon Hill. Hill running in second place, of course, 9.7 seconds behind leader Alain Prost. Ayrton Senna, we suspect, will be in for a tire stop. There goes Damon Hill. Curious, the team was not ready for him. Here comes Gerhard Berger into the Ferrari pits. They have the tires at the ready. Those wraps that were taken off are $10,000 electric tire blankets that bring the tires up to about 200 degrees, still below operating temperature, but it makes the car much more manageable on the cooler tires when they get out. Here comes Alain Prost, the race leader. Is he planning a stop? No, not this time around.
One of the best men in F1 at conserving his tires.
At the back of your screen, you see that big concrete foundation. They are building a casino hotel on the island here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Hopefully we'll all get to stay there next year. Here comes Ayrton Senna into the pits. James Allen is standing by. Here he comes, James.
Okay, Ayrton Senna comes in. He too has got a very, very dirty car. It's obviously a lot of dirt, oil out in the circuit today. He's wiping his visor. It's a big problem with the lights. Nice fast stop there from the McLaren team. Ayrton Senna back out in the chase. The question now, will Alain Prost stop or will he conserve his tires all the way through? He might try and push to create a gap for himself, and then Williams will really have to do a good pit stop.
We'll soon know, James. A 5.6-second pit stop for the world champions from Team McLaren. We'll be back. Back in the pits at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Did I say world champions from McLaren? I meant world champions of pit stops in 5.6 seconds. But Benetton just did nearly as good a job on Riccardo Patrese's car.
Running in 5th place, Riccardo Patrese having his best race for a long time. You can see how quickly they can drive straight to the pit lane and straight out. This is one of the fastest pit lanes in Formula One because it's almost a straight blast through after you negotiate that first right-left chicane.
You'll notice there are no pit walls except the one between the track and the pits. A lot of folks standing down there as these guys come blowing through at about 130 miles an hour at the end of the pit lane. Very, very dangerous, but that's the way it's done in Formula One.
And there's a traffic light situation, or a traffic light at the end of the pit lane, and it'll tell you to go green, yellow, or red. I can't imagine somebody saying, putting a yellow one up and go stop it. Look at the oil now running down the side of Alain Prost's car. We got a good close-up of it right there. I wonder where did all that oil come from?
Closing in on Christian Fittipaldi, trying to get around. You've got to be careful here in this very tight right-left turn section. Now high speed and into the stadium for the hairpin. And Prost will take Fittipaldi there.
You can't argue with 100 horsepower more when you're in the minority, which is the Ford V8, and that Renault V10 just pulls out. You have no answer. You just better move aside and let him go. Tuck him behind him and try and learn from one of the best Grand Prix drivers ever to sit in a racing car.
Prost leads. He has not pitted for new tires. Behind him, Ayrton Senna, 28 seconds back in second place, has pitted. Michael Schumacher has pitted, but Prost is in the pits. The leader is in. James Allen, are you down there?
Alain Prost comes into the car. I'm trying to get a look at that oil. I talked to the team. They're as mystified about where it came from as you are, Derek. But 4 tires go on safely. A lot of brake dust coming off. Prost, as he said, using the brakes hard. Slides a little bit, but he's out in reasonable time and he's back safely into the lead.
That hoarse bark from the traction control system that cuts the engines. You saw the McLaren guys in the lanes because this man was in. Michael Andretti running in 20th place right now. The best pit stops in the business from the McLaren team get Michael Andretti back on his way.
And it becomes a test session for Michael, but he needs mileage in this car to become more familiar with it, not only just racing conditions, but also racing in this particular car. So although it's a bit frustrating for a driver to lose those 2 laps right at the start, it will be still a good experience day for Michael if he can finish here.
A few more gaps. 28.9 seconds first to this man in second. Well, 13 now after they cross the start-finish line. If the race were to end right now, it would be a 1-point world championship in favor of Ayrton Senna, now that he's moved from 3rd to 2nd place. More than half a minute back to Michael Schumacher in 3rd. 4 seconds behind Schumacher is Damon Hill. Behind him is Carl Wendlinger, 24 seconds back. Then Riccardo Patrese, another 13 seconds. 1.2 seconds to Gerhard Berger. Martin Brundle right with Berger right now. Just 0.3 of a second separating them as they came across the line. J.J. Leto 5 seconds further back. And Eric Comas 1.6 further behind him. Notice all the rubber building up on the side of the racetrack. Very hot here in Montreal today. And these drivers having to work hard inside all those layers of fire retardant material. A look at our Ford Electronics telemetry aboard Michael Schumacher's car. Up he goes, over 145, 160, 170 miles an hour at the start-finish line, 180 before he gets on the brakes.
This is great. This is real-time telemetry, exactly what he's doing in the car. You can hear him, look. Full throttle. Watch how quickly he goes through here. This is second gear. Only drops down to 75 and bang, straight back on the power again. This is one of the hard braking zones here. This is one of the, oh, he gets it sideways. Almost off the racetrack. Under braking, locks up the rears, corrects it on the way in, runs out of racetrack almost. And look how much time he lost in the car that was ahead of him. Well, Michael Schumacher has been doing this because we've been inside, on board with him, all through practice and qualifying. We have seen him overdrive this car almost every lap. But that is his style.
He and John Alesi are probably the most flamboyant drivers, if you will, in Formula One right now. That's Andrea de Cesaris and the Tyrrell Yamaha up ahead.
You can see the V10 Yamaha doesn't have the legs of the Ford, but look, now he's right behind him, maintains the draft and pulls out. We saw sparks coming up from de Cesaris' Tyrrell as it runs along the ground, but Schumacher safely through. And again, look, he makes that adjustment on the steering wheel. It adjusts the active ride suspension, that little blue button on his steering wheel.
Now let's take another look at what happened to Michael Schumacher less than one lap ago when he got a little bit sideways going into this tight left-hander.
Heavy braking for turn 6. Now watch this. Never gets away from him. Look at that. Look, opposite lock, almost. And he just keeps it on the black patch before he gets onto the grass.
That wasn't as scary as him going nose to tail with Andrea de Cesaris through that flat-out blind kink onto the straightaway leading to the pit straight. Lots of great action still to come from the circuit. Gilles Villeneuve, Alain Prost's lead, and we'll be right back to the Grand Prix of Canada. Stay with us. On board with Carl Wendlinger in the Sauber pits, last of the top 5 cars to make a pit stop. It's a good one for the Sauber team. He gets back underway. Saw the traffic light Derek mentioned as he makes his way back out onto the racetrack. Wendlinger well behind the 4th place car of Damon Hill, well ahead of the 6th place car of Riccardo Patrese.
Caused a bit of a problem during the last qualifying session. He spun at the last right-left chicane, hit the curb, tore an oil line, deposited a lot of oil on the racetrack, and lots of cars went slower. And Damon Hill here actually spun at the end of that qualifying session on Carl Wendlinger's oil.
Across the start-finish line goes Damon Hill. Here comes one of the Lotus cars, and then one of the McLarens, it would appear. 11 cars remain on the lead lap. This is a beautiful racetrack, but as I mentioned at the top of our show, it all has to do with the spirit of Gilles Villeneuve, whose name is inscribed on the start-finish line. Here's Derek with more.
Whenever the Formula One World Championship comes to Montreal, you cannot help but be aware or almost feel the presence of one of the most exciting racing drivers ever to set foot in a Formula One car, Gilles Villeneuve. He became one of the most popular drivers ever in Formula One because of his brave and aggressive style behind the wheel. His wheel-to-wheel battle with René Arnoux in Dijon, France, where they literally pushed each other off the racetrack, exemplified Villeneuve's no-holds-barred driving style. On the limit or over the limit, it didn't make any difference to Villeneuve, but it was often very costly on the machinery. With 4 wheels, he was always very fast. On 3 wheels, he still kept the prancing horse running. It only slowed him down slightly. But the move that greatly contributed to Villeneuve's demise happened at Imola when his teammate Didier Pironi broke team orders and snatched Villeneuve's Grand Prix win. 2 weeks later, while battling for the pole in Zolder, Belgium, Gilles Villeneuve lost his life in this terrible crash, and the world of motorsports were left to mourn a true hero.
He was one of my best friends in Formula One when unfortunately he died, and I think he was, for sure, at this time, the most straight guy in Formula One. I mean, most straight drivers, and it's a shame because I like him very much.
Well, he was a sensational driver. He was always getting people very much excited about his driving style and his performance. And of course, coming to Canada, there is always tennis to remember about him. But sadly, he's not here anymore.
Villeneuve's finest hour came right here in front of his adoring home crowd when he took his first Formula One checkered flag. Now, we only have memories of this great racing driver.
That memory lives on here in Canada. There is Gilles Villeneuve, who is pictured on the credentials for this race as Formula One honors its traditions and its legends. On board with Alain Prost, a bit of a legend in his own right. If we were in baseball, he would be a certain Hall of Famer, I think we might agree. Right now, he is 8.9 seconds ahead of Ayrton Senna as he works lap number 41, but that gap has been coming down. On lap 36, it was over 10 seconds.
I'm sure you've heard of the fly-by-wire throttle system that McLaren introduced. Well, Williams have been testing their own over the last couple of races. They're using it here for the very first time. What that means is the throttle pedal is not connected by a cable, and he gets caught in traffic here, but it's not connected by a cable to the engine. Now, what is the advantage? Well, one is lightweight. They don't have to run a throttle cable through the fuel tank. But a fly-by-wire system means that when Alain Prost or Damon Hill wants to down-change, they never touch the throttle pedal. He gets on the brakes, and the engine automatically programs itself to blip the revs as the gearbox goes down through the engine. Now, if you think about that, when the driver gets off the starting line, he never uses his left foot again for the rest of the race because of that new fly-by-wire throttle system.
Christian Fittipaldi just ahead, running in 11th spot. So this is Alain Prost trying to make it 10 cars on the lead lap.
Just to follow on a little bit, I asked Adrian Newey, I said, does Prost and Hill use their right foot or their left foot for braking? Well, he uses his right foot here, but he uses his right foot all the time. And now Newey says, I wonder if they go to the IndyCar style of braking with their left foot, will they pick up another millisecond? A millisecond under braking is what they look for, because that may be a tenth of a second over 2.5 miles.
Christian Fittipaldi goes down a lap. The gap is now 9.2 seconds from first place Alain Prost to second place Ayrton Senna. Good view of the hairpin with the St. Lawrence River in the background. We'll take a quick timeout. Damon Hill runs fourth. We'll be back to Canada in a moment. The most dramatic incident at the Canadian Grand Prix in 1992 was Nigel Mansell's attempt to take the race lead from Ayrton Senna running in second place when Nigel came off the corner, but he did it through the gravel trap and spun. He then marched into the pit lane and made his feelings known about what he perceived Senna's driving style to McLaren team manager Ron Dennis. Our thanks to Ivor Briedis for providing those pictures with his home video camera. All the rest of us, frankly, missed it. There is Ayrton Senna running in second place right now, as he was briefly in the race last year. He took over the lead last year and broke. Nigel Mansell was also out of the race. Gerhard Berger, very happy to pick up the honors.
Something else that has come to light this weekend is you've heard of active suspension and passive suspension. Well, the McLaren here, Dr. Udo Zucker, who handles all the tag electronics, now calls the McLaren suspension a slow active system. They still use springs and shock absorbers, but the active suspension is only used in high-speed corners. Therefore, Dr. Zucker considers this to be a slow active suspension, and I believe this is the type that he believes should be allowed next year in Formula One, even if they ban fully active suspension.
We'll talk about all those bans in a moment, but it's time for our Suzuki Motorcycles mid-race recap. The leader of the race, of course, is Alain Prost. He has been since the 6th lap of the event. Alain Prost took over the lead from his teammate Damon Hill. Hill then had a slow pit stop. He has dropped to 4th place in the race right now. We'll continue with the mid-race recap in just a moment, but first let's get down to James Allen to tell us more about the future of technology in Formula One.
Well, thank you, Bob. I've managed to get hold, don't ask me how I did, but I managed to get hold of the Stewards Bulletin, which has dropped a bombshell on Formula One, and it says that certain cars do not comply with the regulations in that they have parts which influence the aerodynamic performance, but do not remain immobile in relation to the sprung part of the car. They're talking, of course, about active suspension. Williams is on there, Tyrrell's on there, McLaren is on there. It's a very complicated issue. Max Mosley, who's the president of FISA, we spoke to him in Kyalami about technology. He has just restructured the whole of the governing body of international motorsport, and this is seen as a shot across the bows to McLaren's Ron Dennis, who is trying to restructure. Patrese is in with a broken rear wing. I should just finish what I was saying. McLaren's Ron Dennis was threatening to take FISA to court over the ban of active suspension, and this is a warning shot across his bows. Anyway, we'll chase down, see what's happening with Riccardo Patrese right now.
All right, thank you very much, James Allen. They're putting a new nose on the car. It looks like everything else is all right. Riccardo Patrese will get back into the action. He is running in... darned if I can't find him on our timing and scoring system right now. I'm not sure exactly where Patrese... There he is, 9th. He was running 9th at the time. We don't know whether he lost a position or not. On board with him. Noisy engine there. Normally the noise means the traction control is interfering with the smooth operation of the engine, but that one just doesn't sound good.
No, the traction control, of course, is one of these things that they're trying to get banned, one of these driver aids. Now, James Ward used the word bombshell. It was a bombshell when that press release came out, because it virtually said all the front-running cars in the championship were actually illegal. And that was a lot of bad feeling throughout the pit lane when that was actually made public to everybody. In fact, Williams issued their own statement this morning, and it said, we consider this document to be regrettable in its content and regrettable in its timing. And there was even word that we hope Nigel Mansell's World Championship from last year was not clouded by suggesting that he drove a car that was in any way illegal. So a lot of bad feeling up and down the pit lane over this issue.
In fact, I think that Williams' response was upping the ante a bit. Well, if the cars aren't legal now, they're saying, are you saying Nigel Mansell's World Championship was illegal? Perhaps daring the FIA to step forward and take even stronger steps. A lot of polemics, a lot of politics in Formula One, as any fan knows. We hope that this will not become a cloud on the series in the future.
Of course, what they term as an aerodynamic device was the wings. Now this car is an aerodynamic device because of the way they use the rear diffusers. Well, with the active suspension, you can alter the way these diffusers work during the course of a lap. That is what they're terming as a movable aerodynamic device. That's one of the reasons why they're trying to ban this complete active suspension system.
Well, it was almost ludicrous. All of the top teams, Williams, McLaren, Ferrari, Benetton, all the way down the line, there were only 1 or 2 teams in the entire pit lane not pointed out in this bulletin. James Allen has more from the pit lane.
Yeah, Bob, you're talking about this incident, the banning, the bombshell we call it. It's all part of something much bigger, the restructuring of the governing body. Formula One has been ruled by an agreement called the Concord Agreement, which says every team has to agree any change that is going to be made to the rules. And what effectively has happened is that agreement has gone right out the window, and from now on it'll be consensus government, just like it is in major companies. Perhaps a much more sensible way of running the sport. Certainly the sponsors seem to think so.
I was about to say, James, this capacity crowd on a beautiful day in Montreal did not come to see a battle of press releases and to hear lawyers argue in front of judges. They came to see the kind of action we've seen since the green light here on the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve. Now let's take a look at our Suzuki mid-race recap. Alain Prost continues on the point. He has led 40 laps. The lead change won among the 2 drivers, Prost and teammate Damon Hill. Hill now runs in 4th place after that long pit stop. The cars out of the race, Philippe Ayot, Mark Blundell, Rubens Barrichello, Jean Alesi, and Fabrizio Barbazza. The other 20 cars still circulating. Michael Andretti is 19th, 3 laps down to this man, race leader Alain Prost. 10 seconds behind Prost is Ayrton Senna. None of the other battles very close for position right now. Stand by and we'll be back to Canada. Montreal is not only the home of the Canadiens and one of the most beautiful cities in the world, it also is a center of education. 4 universities, 2 of them do their teaching in English. 2 of them in French. One of the English-speaking universities, McGill, which sits on the hillside on the broad shoulders of Mount Royal, or Montreal, from which the city takes its name. Great programs there as you watch Alain Prost making his way around. Derek, I guess you're an alumni of McGill in a way.
Yes,
alumnus, I should say.
Of a way. One of their great programs is that driver physiological assessment program they do. They assess your strength, your weaknesses, compare you to other drivers, and give you workout programs to make you a better driver, which makes you a safer driver. Run by Dan Marisi and Jacques Dallaire. It's now also based in Daytona, Florida, I believe, as well as McGill University.
Michael Waltrip has gone through that program. I believe Ayrton Senna has also stopped in at McGill University to be tested. Ukio Katayama in the Tyrrell goes down another lap to Ayrton Senna, the red and white number 8 McLaren Ford. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti now in 17th place, 3 laps down after Riccardo Patrese has retired the Benetton. And Michael Schumacher at the back is closing up on Senna.
This is the race that's beginning to unfold here. We're inside now with Schumacher, and that is Senna right ahead of him, and nothing spurs a driver on more to pull the absolute best from himself than the carrot of a red McLaren driven by Senna, just ahead of him in the 6 points position as opposed to the 4 points position that Schumacher is in.
Michael Schumacher is just taking huge chunks off the lap record. He has knocked it down 3 times in the last 3 laps. We're now down to 1:21.5. That is 0.8 of a second under the old record.
Now watch him fight the steering wheel. There he is, correction there. Always has that mid-corner correction because he jumps on that horsepower so aggressively. But he is reeling him in 1.5 seconds. So we are in for a doozy here if he gets closer to Ayrton Senna in the next 2 or 3 laps.
And you know one guy who is cheering Michael Schumacher on if he knows what's going on, that's Alain Prost. If the race were to end right now, Senna would still have the lead in the World Championship by 1. But if Schumacher can get around Senna for 2nd place, it suddenly switches back in Alain Prost's favor.
It's not 1.5 seconds now. You can see it's now down to almost half a second. I would say half a second. Now watch the hairpin here. This is where they will close up. Under heavy braking here. Closer now than ever.
Try to bring in our Ford Electronics telemetry as Michael closes up.
And you can see the oil all over the nose cone of Schumacher's car. Look, he has his left finger, the thumb, on that button that adjusts the active suspension to get the maximum from this car, edging ever closer to Senna. Look, crashes over the curves. Back onto the telemetry. Look at the right foot there, the part of the throttle, 100%.
10 laps to go as they flash across the start-finish line. Riccardo Patrese has parked the other Benetton. James Allen has more.
Benetton is normally a very open team about what's wrong with their cars. We've talked to Flavio Briatore often in the past. They're not telling anybody what's wrong with them this time. I had to go out round the back, find out for myself. The reason why Riccardo Patrese has retired from the Canadian Grand Prix is cramp. There's nothing wrong with the car whatsoever. It's just what's wrong with Riccardo.
That's certainly a log thrown on the fire, growing among the European press that at 247 Grands Prix, far more than any other driver, maybe it's time for Riccardo Patrese to find something else to do at age 38.
Or else, before he goes home, take a trip to the McGill University, because if that is the real reason why he stopped, he may be in trouble. I saw him pull out of a Grand Prix before in Brazil, in the Brabham, when he lost control of the car because he physically could not drive it. He got dizzy in the car. That is an ominous sign for Patrese. And believe me, you mentioned it, Bob, the European press will jump all over Patrese for pulling out of a Grand Prix in a points-paying position because he physically couldn't drive the car.
Well, it looks like the battle between Ayrton Senna up there in the vibrations and Michael Schumacher has stabilized. We'll take another timeout and return. We're running out of laps here at the Grand Prix of Canada. Stay with us. To all the folks in Buffalo, New York, I'm sure Michael Andretti appreciates the sentiment, even if you do spell his first name wrong, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Thank you. And right now, Michael is indeed going. He is among the fastest 5 or 6 cars on the racetrack. He is up to 15th place now as he brings the number 7 McLaren through the field. You're on board with Michael Schumacher. This is the battle of the race right now. That's 2nd place, Ayrton Senna up ahead.
And Senna is in traffic, and he's caught behind the traffic. That's one of the footwork cars. Senna needs to get by him, or Schumacher will gobble up that last half second.
He has room now.
Now, where's Schumacher, though? Oh, he's right there, right there. Oh, it's one thing to catch Ayrton Senna, but when you try and make a move to pass him, sometimes you need a lot more than the 9 laps that's left here.
Through the hairpin. There'll be 8 laps to go when they cross the start-finish line.
The battle of the Fords. The Ford qualifying battle was won by Schumacher. He was almost a full second clear of Ayrton Senna, and Schumacher will tell you openly his yardstick every time he comes to a Grand Prix is the other Ford engine car driven by Senna and Michael Andretti. He won the qualifying battle, but this is the doozy right here.
The gap is less than a second. 8 laps to go. 25th Canadian Grand Prix, the 15th time this race has been held here in Montreal. Riccardo Patrese was in it in 1978 as the most experienced driver in Formula One. As you've heard, he is out of the race with a cramp. Perhaps the lengthiest career.
Oh, look at this!
Winding down, Schumacher nearly takes off the right front corner as he goes by.
Senna's in trouble, though. Senna is in trouble. Yeah, you can clearly see it. He is in trouble.
Just like last year, Ayrton Senna, mechanical problems almost at the same spot on the racetrack as last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that took Michael Schumacher by surprise because Senna slowed so abruptly that Schumacher went down the outside. I believe they may have touched. Look at this. Schumacher catches him so fast, goes to the outside. Senna doesn't see him. Oh, he hits him. He actually hits him right there. Hopefully there's not damage to Schumacher's car. Totally took him by surprise, and a disaster for Ayrton Senna's World Championship hopes. Now look at this. Look at the wall. There's nowhere to go. Hits him right there. Doesn't hit him hard, but he definitely did touch wheels with Senna. Senna, he doesn't wave at Schumacher. He puts his arm in the air to say, I am dead meat here, boys. Try and get round me without too much harm.
Now you're on board with Ayrton Senna. Let's get his view of things. Actually, this is the 3rd year he will fail to finish the Grand Prix, and there it was. I don't think he even saw Schumacher coming.
Well, things happen so fast. Look at Schumacher out in the grey. Look, way out in the grey. Keeps the car on the black patch so it doesn't get onto the grass. But Schumacher now, Benetton has gone so well here in the past. Now they're running second again. Remember what happened 2 years ago when Piquet was running second to Mansell and Williams with 1 lap to go? The Benetton still managed to win.
So Michael Schumacher now rests behind Alain Prost, and that's great news for Prost. Senna will score no points in the race, and as a result, Prost will take a 5-point lead in the World Championship. Senna came in with 1. Alain Prost will go out with it. We're going to have a great season of World Championship racing here on ESPN, and I hope you'll be with us for every stop from here on out.
There's one of the chief designers at McLaren, Neil Oakley, takes all the radio gear off. His day is over now, but they were watching the telemetry earlier to see if they could work out what happened to Senna's car. Now the only thing for the McLaren to watch now is Michael Andretti, who continues to run very fast. He's in the top 5 or 6 fastest cars on the racetrack, and has been, even though he was 2 laps down before he ever started.
Michael is now 15th. Alain Prost is working lap number 65. There will be 4 laps to go the next time around. You can see all that oil on the side of the car. That car has taken a beating today. We'll take one more time out and come back for the closing laps of the Grand Prix of Canada. Prost, Schumacher, Hill, Berger, Brundle, and Wendlinger. Back at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, up through the gearbox. So the Williams Renault powering up to about 165 miles an hour under the bridge. Hard on the brakes, right and left-hand corners. Alain Prost will have 1 lap to go next time around the start-finish line.
And you can hear the noise of the V10 Renault engine. All the V10s have a very distinctive noise of their own, as opposed to the Ford V8 and the Ferrari V12. But believe me, the noise, the engine noise now from Formula One cars is absolutely ear-piercing. And you just have to be here to understand how ear-piercing and how exciting it is to have a stream of F1 cars go by you, and you literally have to wear earplugs if you're going to stand there for more than 3 or 4 laps.
Shimmering through the heat haze, 1 lap to go for Alain Prost. He will take the signal from the flag stand. One more look at our Ford Electronics telemetry aboard Michael Schumacher's car. Riccardo Patrese is out of the race. Schumacher runs second, 14.2 seconds down to the leader.
And don't take any chances here, Michael. If he has a little... Oh, did he hit him or did he hit the curb?
That was Luca Badoer's Lola.
We just said don't take any chances here with 1 lap to go, because the chances of you racing harder and catching Prost are 0. So behave yourself and be careful. But if Benetton can come home here with a good second place, they will be delighted with our weekend. But Prost comes down the inside of the Minardi driven by Fittipaldi. You can see even on the left side of the car, there is streams of oil all over that car. I am still curious as to where that came from.
Christian Fittipaldi tucks right in behind the winningest driver in Grand Prix history. At one point, Alain Prost had a victory in every season of his Formula One career for some 10 years before that string was broken back in 1991. There's the Jacques Cartier Bridge in the background. You got to look at the Olympic Stadium where the Major League Baseball Expos play. Shimmering through the heat haze, 2 more corners for Alain Prost, and he will pick up his 48th career victory at age 38. A man en route to a possible 4th World Championship. He will leave the Ile Villeneuve with a 5-point lead over Ayrton Senna for the World Championship. This is the 7th race of 16. We have 9 more to go. We will be at each one. Our Suzuki motorcycle victor, Alain Prost. After a wild race that began with Michael Andretti at the very back, there's Michael Schumacher warming down. He will finish unofficially in 2nd place. Damon Hill unofficially in 3rd, about 49 seconds back. There is Damon, still at full tilt boogie.
And I'm sure he will catch some criticism for being beaten by the Ford engine car of Michael Schumacher, because the feeling is if Prost can make this car go so fast and win and be dominant, that Damon Hill should at least be able to keep him well in sight. So Damon Hill, we mentioned earlier, almost a no-win situation for him, which is all you can call today.
There is Frank Williams in the Williams garage looking at his special bank of computer monitors, scoring monitors, television monitors. Frank has it all right there.
And has no emotion on his face. Very seldom ever breaks a smile when his cars win, because he will tell you that is what he came here for. That's what they work for. And it's not a surprise when they come away with it. All it is a reasonably good job well done.
In fact, Frank would probably tell you it's too bad that Damon Hill finished 3rd instead of 2nd. The 2nd place would have been a couple of more very useful championship points. Alain Prost salutes the crowd. A huge crowd on hand here. A lot of the drivers have been very vocal about the fact they have noticed the empty seats in the grandstands around the Formula One circuit. None of those to be had here today. I even went out looking for a couple of seats for some friends for this race. Not to be had, folks. There is Michael Schumacher on the right as the field makes its way back around to Parc Fermé, where the cars will be inspected. Gerhard Berger there will finish 4th. Martin Brundle 5th. And Carl Wendlinger in the 6th and final points-paying position. That will be a big boost for him. Unofficially, Michael Andretti will finish in 14th place, 3 laps down, and going as quickly as the leaders at the end of this race. There's a look at some of the other finishers. We'll be right back. This ESPN Speed World presentation has been brought to you by Volvo. Volvo would like you to drive safely. By Citgo, fly with the new Superpower. And by Suzuki. Your Suzuki motorcycle dealer has the ride you've been waiting for and the financing to get it. Back in Montreal, the Canadian Grand Prix is now official. James Allen is standing by with Michael Andretti.
Okay, Michael Andretti, your ECU failed on the start line. When are you going to get some luck?
I don't know. I'd like to know. You know, the car ran well after that. I think we had a definite point finish for sure, and who knows, maybe better than that. You know, I think we were running pretty competitive times. The car felt good, and it's just one of those things, you know. One of these days we'll put it all together.
One of these days, he certainly will. Here are the final results. Alain Prost's 48th career victory is his first here in Montreal. Michael Schumacher, a great drive for second. In third, Damon Hill. Derek Daly, your thoughts?
Great to see that Ferrari in the points-paying position. Expect big things from them in the future when they get another new car.
Good job by Martin Brundle and Carl Wendlinger as well. In fifth and sixth, Michael Andretti officially 14th. Let's take a look at the drivers' points. As the celebration continues on the podium, Alain Prost will take 5 seconds off of Ayrton Senna for the world champion. Actually, 10 points off of Ayrton Senna, a 5-point lead. Damon Hill consolidates third, but Michael Schumacher is right there. In the Constructors' Championship, Williams by 20 points over McLaren. Benetton's Ford is third. Meanwhile, Alain Prost is up in the interview room. Let's hear from the Grand Prix winner.
It was good because the car was working perfectly, but I had to push very hard during the whole race because Michael was pushing Ayrton very hard at the end, so I had to keep the gap. It was not so easy. Also, it's a very difficult track, I mean physically, because you have to brake very hard very often, and after a few laps you don't feel your right foot very well, you know, so it's very difficult. Also, I had to overtake a lot of cars. I mean, normal circumstances, you know, but I'm quite happy, and the team has done a very good job. It's the first time we race with the power throttle, and we won the race. I'm quite pleased.
Alain Prost, the winner, but the Formula One World Tour marches on. Checkered flag coverage of the Grand Prix of Canada, Monday, June 14th at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern. Our next stop, the Grand Prix of France from Manicourt, Sunday, the 4th of July, 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:50 a.m. Pacific, live. We hope you'll join us for that. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Daly and James Allen. Thanks for being with us. So long from the circuit Gilles Villeneuve on the Ile Notre Dame in the St. Lawrence River at Montreal, Canada.